It was a hot, dry day on the faraway planet of Tharion, a small, rocky world that humans had only recently begun to settle. The planet's surface was covered with rolling hills, thick with red dust and scattered with unusual green plants. The sun blazed down from a pale, hazy sky, casting long shadows over the small village where a group of humans lived among the native Tharion people. This village was one of the few places on the planet where humans had made a real home, building outposts and farms with the help of the local population. Life here was hard, but it was growing. Little by little, humans and Tharians learned to work together. Among the human settlers was Captain Lena Korik, a strong-willed woman who had spent most of her life serving in the military. After years of fighting in wars and facing unimaginable challenges, Lena had found herself on Tharion, no longer a soldier but a healer. She had put away her weapons and now used her skills to help others. It was a different kind of battle, one where compassion was her armor and kindness was her weapon. It was here on a quiet street in the village that two young children were racing toward the human outpost, their hearts pounding in their chests. They ran through the dirt streets, their feet kicking up the red dust as they shouted for help. The older child, a girl with long, braided hair, clutched the hand of her younger brother who could barely keep up. His small legs were no match for her speed, but he didn't complain. He was scared. "Come on, hurry," the girl called, her voice tight with worry. "We have to make it to the humans." The boy didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the ground in front of him, his face pale with fear. Their puppy, the small ball of fur they had raised from a young age, was their only comfort. And now the puppy needed help, urgent help. The children didn't know who else to turn to. As they reached the outpost, they burst through the gates, their faces streaked with dirt and desperation. They had heard stories about the humans on Tharion, about how they were different, how they could do things that seemed impossible. And they hoped with all their hearts that those stories were true. Inside the outpost, Captain Lena was tending to some minor wounds of the local villagers, as she often did. The outpost was humble but well kept. There were a few advanced machines for medical care, but much of the work was done by hand. Lena was skilled at making do with what she had, and she had become known as the best healer on the planet. But even Lena had her limits. When she heard the sound of children's voices calling for help, she looked up from her work and saw them running toward her. The girl's face was filled with panic and the boy's eyes were wide with fear. Both children were out of breath, but it was clear that something terrible had happened. "Please, please help us," the girl cried, her voice shaking. "Our puppy, he's sick and our mom can't move." She's so weak, we don't know what to do." Lena's heart sank as she saw the fear in their eyes. She immediately motioned for them to come closer, her expression softening. "Come here," she said gently. "Tell me what happened." The girl, struggling to hold back tears, quickly explained. Their mother had been in an accident a few days ago. She had been gathering food from the nearby fields when something, perhaps a strange animal or the shifting ground, caused her to fall. The fall had left her unable to move. They had done their best to care for her, but now she was growing weaker every day. The puppy, a small, golden creature with big brown eyes, had stayed by her side, trying to comfort her, but even the puppy seemed to be growing sick. Lena nodded. She could see how scared they were, and she knew she had to act quickly. "Take me to your mother," she said, and without waiting for a response, she began to walk toward the exit of the outpost. The children followed closely behind her, still unsure of what would happen next. They had never seen someone like Lena before, and they didn't know if their mother would make it. As they walked through the village, Lena could hear the soft whir of machines from the outpost behind her, the occasional chatter of villagers working, and the faint barking of the puppy. But all of that seemed distant to the children. Their focus was on their mother, lying helpless in their home. It wasn't long before they arrived at the small hut where the family lived. The house was simple but cozy. There was a small garden out front, and the door was open. Inside, Lena could see their mother lying in bed, her face pale and her body motionless. The children rushed to her side, calling out to her softly. The puppy was curled up by her feet, looking up with sad, tired eyes. Lena knelt beside the bed, taking a deep breath as she surveyed the situation. The mother's skin was cold to the touch, and she was barely breathing. She had been unable to move for days, and there were signs of severe weakness in her body. Lena's medical training told her that this was not just a simple injury. There was something deeper going on here, something that required immediate attention. "Stay back," Lena said quietly to the children. "I need to check her vitals." The children stepped back, watching as Lena worked. She checked the mother's pulse, her temperature, and her breathing. It was clear that something was wrong with her nervous system. But what could have caused this? It didn't make sense. Tharian wasn't known for having dangerous creatures, and the mother hadn't been exposed to anything that could cause this kind of condition. Lena stood up and looked around the room, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't just give up. There had to be a way to help this woman. "Do you have any medical supplies?" she asked, turning to the children. The girl nodded quickly. "Yes, we have some basic things," she said, "but we don't know what's wrong with her. We tried everything. Nothing worked." Lena thought for a moment. "I need to use some of my human technology," she said slowly. "I might be able to help, but it's going to be tricky. Your mother's condition is serious. I'll need your help, too. Can you trust me?" The children exchanged a quick glance. Their eyes were filled with fear and uncertainty, but they knew they had no other choice. They had to trust this human. "Yes," the girl whispered, nodding. "Please help her." Lena smiled warmly. "I will do everything I can." With that, Lena began to work, setting up a small portable device she carried with her at all times. It was a simple machine, a mix of human technology and basic tools she had fashioned herself. It was designed for emergency situations like this, when there were no advanced medical facilities nearby. She carefully connected the device to the mother's body, using electrodes to stimulate her nervous system. It was a delicate process, and Lena had to be precise. As the machine hummed to life, Lena spoke softly to the children. "This may take some time, but I want you to stay calm. It's important that your mother stays relaxed." The children nodded, sitting quietly beside their mother. The puppy, sensing the change in the air, lifted its head, watching Lena with curious eyes. It, too, seemed to understand that something important was happening. For hours, Lena worked tirelessly, adjusting the device and checking the mother's condition. The children didn't speak, too worried to say anything. They simply watched as the human healer did her best to save their mother. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the machine beeped softly and the mother's hand twitched. Lena's eyes widened. It was a small movement, but it was a movement nonetheless. The children gasped. "Mom!" the girl cried, her voice filled with hope. Lena smiled and nodded. "She's waking up. She's not out of danger yet, but this is a good sign." The mother's eyes fluttered open, and she looked around the room, confused but alive. Her breathing was still labored, but she was no longer as weak. She reached for the children, and they rushed to her side, tears in their eyes. Lena stood up and backed away, watching the reunion with a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had done what she could, and now it was up to the woman to heal on her own. "Thank you," the girl whispered to Lena, her voice filled with gratitude. Lena nodded, her eyes soft. "You're welcome. It's not just me, it's all of us together." The days that followed were filled with hope and uncertainty. Lena had done what she could, but now the hard part was over. It was up to the woman to recover. Every day, Lena checked on the mother, adjusting the devices she had set up and making sure her condition was stable. The children stayed close, never leaving their mother's side. They helped her eat, made sure she drank enough water, and even played with the puppy, who was slowly recovering from his illness as well. The house, which had been filled with fear and uncertainty just days before, began to feel like home again. The mother, though still weak, was starting to show signs of improvement. Her color was returning to her face, and she could move her fingers, though slowly. The first time she moved her hand to touch her children, they both cried. They couldn't believe that this was happening, that their mother was coming back to them. They had never felt such relief in their lives. One evening, Lena sat by the mother's bed, her eyes tired but content. The village was quiet outside, and the stars above Tharian shone brightly in the sky. The children had gone to bed, their small bodies curled up in a corner of the room, the puppy at their feet. Lena had given them a sedative to help them sleep through the night. She knew that tomorrow would be another busy day, full of small victories and challenges as the mother continued to heal. Lena had been on this planet for months now, but in some ways it felt like a lifetime. She had never imagined she would be in a place like this, healing people instead of fighting battles. But there was something about this planet, something about the people she had met, that made her want to stay. Maybe it was the simplicity of life here, or maybe it was the way the Tharian people had welcomed her and her fellow humans. Either way, she felt at peace. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was where she was meant to be. The soft sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. She turned to see the girl standing in the doorway, her face still full of concern. She looked small, despite her courage. The girl had been so brave during the entire ordeal, never once complaining even when she had every right to. Lena smiled at her, gesturing for her to come in. "Is everything okay?" Lena asked softly, her voice low to avoid waking the others. The girl nodded, but Lena could see the worry in her eyes. "I don't know if Mom is really going to be okay. I mean, she's moving and talking now, but—" Lena understood the girl's fears. The recovery process wasn't easy, and even though her mother was improving, the road ahead would be long. "It's normal to feel that way," Lena said. "Your mom is getting better, and that's a good sign, but healing takes time. You have to be patient." The girl stepped closer, her hands twisting together nervously. I want her to be like she was before. I want things to be normal again." Lena sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking for a moment before answering. "I know how you feel. I've seen people go through a lot worse, and sometimes it feels like you're never going to get back to normal. But that's not true. Things can get better. Your mom is strong, and you're strong too." The girl's eyes brightened a little at the words. She looked over at her mother, who was sleeping peacefully now, and then back at Lena. "You really think she'll be okay?" "I do," Lena said with a gentle smile. "She's already come so far. It might take time, but she'll get better. You just need to keep believing." The girl seemed to accept the answer, her face softening as she sat down next to her mother's bed. Lena stood up quietly, giving the girl some space, and left the room. As she stepped into the cool night air, she felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. There was still much work to do, but the hardest part was over. Over the next few days, Lena continued her treatment, monitoring the mother's progress. Slowly but surely, the woman began to regain her strength. She could sit up in bed, and then she could stand with help. She was still very weak, but the fact that she could move at all was a miracle. The children's joy was overwhelming. They watched as their mother became stronger, and they couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at the changes happening before their eyes. Lena had been right. The healing process was slow, but it was happening. Each day, the mother improved just a little more. She could hold her children in her arms again, and they could laugh together as they had before the accident. The puppy, now fully recovered, would run around the house, wagging his tail excitedly. The family's home was once again filled with laughter and life. But even as the family's world returned to some semblance of normalcy, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this story. The fall that had caused the woman's injury seemed strange to her. It wasn't just the fall itself. There was something about the way the woman had been hurt that didn't add up. Lena had seen enough injuries in her life to know when something wasn't right. But there were no signs of violence, no clues that could explain what had happened. The more Lena thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. Had something been left out of the story? Was there something the children hadn't told her? One morning, as Lena sat with the woman, she decided to ask. The mother was awake now, sitting up in bed and looking much stronger than she had in days. Her eyes were bright, and her face had regained its color. The children were outside playing with the puppy, and for the first time in days, it felt like everything was truly okay. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said, her voice soft but curious. The woman looked up at her, her eyes wide. "Of course, what is it?" "I've been thinking about your injury," Lena said. "The fall you took, did anything strange happen before it?" "I know it's hard, but I need to know if there's anything I missed. It might help me understand what caused it." The woman's face grew serious, and for a moment she said nothing. She looked away as though she were lost in thought. Lena waited patiently, not wanting to rush her. Finally, the woman spoke. "I don't remember much of the fall itself, but—" There was something in the air that day, a strange smell, something that made me dizzy, and I saw something in the distance, moving in the shadows. It wasn't like any animal I've seen before. I thought maybe it was a creature from the fields, but it was too fast, too strange. I've never felt anything like it." Lena's heart skipped a beat. She had heard rumors of strange creatures on Tharian, but this was the first time anyone had mentioned something like this. She didn't know what it meant, but she was sure of one thing: there was more to this story than she had first thought. "Thank you for telling me," Lena said quietly. "I'll look into it. Be careful, okay? You and your family." The woman nodded, but there was a look of unease in her eyes. Lena knew she had to get to the bottom of this mystery. Whatever had caused the mother's fall, it wasn't just an accident. Something on Tharian had changed. And Lena, no matter how much she wanted to rest, knew she couldn't stop until she figured out what that something was. As she walked outside, she looked up at the sky. The stars were still out, their faint glow casting shadows on the ground. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something else was out there, something watching, waiting. And whatever it was, it had to be stopped. The days following Lena's conversation with the mother were filled with an uneasy quiet. The family was recovering, but something lingered in the air. A feeling that they were not out of danger, that the strange incident that had caused the mother's fall was not just a random accident. Lena's thoughts kept returning to the woman's words about seeing something strange in the distance before the fall. She knew that there was more to the story than she had initially been told. Lena spent her days tending to the family's needs, helping the children with their schoolwork, and making sure the mother continued to improve. The house was full of life again, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every time she walked outside, her eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any signs of the strange creature the woman had described. She didn't know what it was, but she had a sinking feeling that it was not something that belonged on Tharian. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this planet, which had once felt like a peaceful, simple place, might not be as safe as she had believed. One evening, as Lena sat alone in the quiet of the outpost, she decided to take action. She couldn't keep waiting for something to happen. She needed to investigate. She had been trained to face danger, and she had faced worse in her time as a soldier. But this was different. This was not a battle against an enemy she could see or fight. This was something unknown, something that was hiding in the shadows, and Lena wasn't about to let it remain hidden. The next morning, Lena gathered her equipment. She took her medical kit, her scanner, and a small, lightweight weapon she had kept from her military days. She didn't expect to use it, but she knew it was better to be prepared. The sun was still low in the sky as she set out toward the area the mother had described, the fields where she had been gathering food before the accident. The land was vast, stretching out in all directions with hills and valleys scattered across the landscape. It was the perfect place for something to hide. As Lena walked, her mind raced with questions. What had the woman seen in the distance? Was it a creature or something else? And why had it made her dizzy? The air on Tharian was different from Earth's, but Lena had never felt anything strange in it before. Could it be something in the environment affecting the people, or was there something more sinister going on? The fields were quiet, with only the sound of the wind rustling through the tall grasses. Lena moved cautiously, her eyes scanning the ground for any signs of disturbance. She checked the nearby hills for any movement, any sign of something out of place. But all she saw was emptiness. It was the kind of emptiness that made her feel more uneasy, as if something was lurking just beyond her sight, watching her. After several hours of searching, Lena began to feel the weight of the silence. There were no animals in sight, no signs of life at all. It was as if the land itself had been abandoned. She crouched down to examine the ground, searching for footprints or any disturbance in the earth. That was when she noticed it, a faint trail in the dirt, barely visible but enough to catch her trained eye. It was a strange pattern, almost like something had been dragged across the ground, leaving a faint mark behind. Lena followed the trail, her heart racing. The path led her to the edge of a small forest, where the trees grew thick and twisted, their branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. She paused at the edge, taking in the scene. The air here felt different, cooler, heavier. She could almost taste the change in the air, like something was waiting. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving cautiously into the trees. The forest was dense and the ground was uneven, but she kept her eyes on the trail, following it deeper into the woods. As she walked, the sound of the wind seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie silence. The only noise was the soft crunch of her boots against the forest floor. Then she saw it. At first, it looked like just another tree, its bark twisted and gnarled. But as Lena moved closer, she noticed something strange, something out of place. The tree had a dark stain running down its trunk, like something had been spilled on it. But the stain wasn't just on the outside of the tree. It was inside, too, seeping through the bark in thin, thread-like lines. Lena's stomach twisted as she realized that the stain wasn't just sap. It was something far darker, something alive. She stepped back slowly, her breath catching in her throat. She had never seen anything like this before. The tree was sick, infected by something that didn't belong on Tharian, but what was it? And how had it spread so quickly? Lena turned her attention back to the trail. She couldn't stay here any longer. This wasn't just a strange creature. This was something bigger, something that could hurt the people she had come to care for. She had to find the source of it, no matter the cost. She followed the trail deeper into the forest, her mind racing with thoughts of what she had just seen. The tree was only the beginning. There had to be more of it, something more dangerous hiding just beyond the trees. She could feel it now, the presence of something watching her, following her every move. But every time she looked over her shoulder, there was nothing there, just the stillness of the forest. Hours passed as Lena moved deeper into the woods. She had lost track of time, and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ground. She could feel the temperature dropping, the air growing colder as night approached. But she couldn't stop now, not when she was so close. Then she heard it. At first, it was just a faint sound, like a low hum in the distance. But as Lena listened more closely, she realized it was getting louder. It was a buzzing, a strange, mechanical noise that seemed to be coming from somewhere ahead of her. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound grew louder, more urgent, until it felt like it was vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. And then she saw it. At the center of a small clearing, there was a strange structure. It was unlike anything Lena had ever seen, a massive, dark shape that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. It was covered in the same dark, thread-like substance she had seen on the tree. It was alive, pulsing with energy, as if it were breathing. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight. This was what had caused the mother's fall. This was the thing that had been hiding in the shadows, and it was not just a creature. It was something far more dangerous. Without thinking, Lena reached for her weapon, her hand trembling as she aimed it at the structure. But before she could fire, something moved. The dark substance on the structure began to shift, moving in waves as if it were alive. Lena stepped back, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. What was this thing? Where had it come from? And then from the center of the structure, a figure emerged. It was tall, its shape indistinct, its form flickering like a shadow. For a moment, Lena couldn't tell if it was human or something else. But one thing was certain, it was not a native of Tharian. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, its eyes glowing a pale, unnatural light. Lena's heart raced as she realized the truth. This was no creature from the planet. This was something else, something from beyond, and it was here on Tharian for a reason. Before she could react, the figure spoke. "We've been waiting for you." Lena's blood ran cold. She had no idea what this being wanted, but she knew one thing for sure. The people of Tharian were in danger, and she was the only one who could stop it. Lena stood frozen, her hand still gripping the weapon, her mind racing. The figure before her was not like anything she had encountered in her time on Tharian or anywhere else. It moved slowly, purposefully, its glowing eyes fixed on her with an unnerving intensity. The hum from the strange structure behind it grew louder, a low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to shake the ground beneath her feet. "We've been waiting for you," the figure repeated, its voice cold and distant, yet somehow familiar. It didn't sound human, but there was something in its tone that made Lena's heart skip a beat. It was like the voice of someone who had seen too much, who had lived for far longer than any living being should. Lena didn't lower her weapon. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear beginning to coil in her stomach. "What do you want?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as if considering her question. Then, after a long pause, it spoke again. "I am a messenger, a guide, but you are the one we have been waiting for, the one who will bring balance." Lena's brow furrowed in confusion. "Balance? What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. She had no time for cryptic answers, not when her people, her friends, were at risk. The figure seemed to study her for a moment longer before it responded. "This planet Tharian is not as it seems. You, the humans, are not here by accident. You are here for a reason. You are meant to unlock the secrets hidden within this world, secrets that have been buried for millennia." Lena shook her head, trying to make sense of the figure's words. "I don't know what you mean. We came here to survive, to build a future. We're just trying to live here, not uncover ancient secrets." The figure took a step closer, its movements slow and deliberate. "Your people's arrival on Tharian was not random," it said. "It was orchestrated. There are forces at play here, forces that go beyond your understanding. You were chosen, but you have yet to realize the full extent of your purpose." Lena's mind raced as she processed the figure's words. She had always thought that Tharian was just another planet to colonize, a place where humans could start anew. But now, in the presence of this strange being, it felt like she had stumbled into something much larger, something far beyond the scope of her training and her experience. "You're lying," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. The strange events surrounding the mother's accident, the feeling of unease that had settled over the village, it was all connected somehow. But to what? And why had the humans been brought here? The figure didn't respond to her accusation. Instead, it raised its hand and pointed toward the structure behind it. "That," it said, "is the source. It is both the key and the lock. What you see here is not just a machine. It is a bridge to the past, a bridge to the future." Lena followed its gaze, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight of the structure once more. It was massive, pulsing with strange energy. It looked like something out of a dream, a twisted, otherworldly creation that shouldn't have been able to exist. Yet here it was, right before her eyes. "What do you want me to do?" Lena asked, her voice steady now, despite the uncertainty swirling in her chest. She didn't have much time to waste. She needed answers, and fast. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it took another step closer, its eyes never leaving hers. "You must unlock it," it said, its voice barely above a whisper now. "You must understand what is hidden here, and when you do, you will be able to stop what is coming." Lena's mind raced. "Stop what?" she asked, her voice urgent. She didn't know what she was facing, but she knew it was something dangerous, something she had to stop before it destroyed everything. The figure's gaze darkened, and for a moment Lena thought she saw something that almost looked like fear, flicker in its eyes. "What is coming," it said softly, "is the end. The end of your world, the end of Tharian, the end of everything." Lena's heart skipped a beat at the figure's words. The end? How could it know? How could it possibly be so sure? And if it was telling the truth, what did that mean for the humans on Tharian? Were they all in danger? Were they already too late? The figure seemed to sense her confusion. "There is a force," it continued, "a force that has been waiting for centuries. It has been waiting for the right moment to strike, and when it does, it will bring destruction unlike anything you have ever seen. Only by unlocking the secrets of this planet will you have a chance to stop it." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the very future of everything. The stakes had never been higher. "Then what do I need to do?" Lena asked, her voice resolute. If there was even a chance to stop this force, she had to take it. She couldn't let the people she cared about, the children, the families, the village, she couldn't let them suffer. The figure remained silent for a moment before answering. "You must open the structure. You must awaken what lies inside. Only then will you have the power to stop the coming storm." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what this being meant by awakening what was inside, but she had no choice. She had to try. If there was even a small chance that it could save the people of Tharian, then she had to take it. The figure stepped back, allowing Lena to approach the structure. It seemed to fade into the shadows, as though it was no longer necessary to guide her. She could feel the weight of its presence, but now it was as though she was alone with the structure, standing at the edge of the unknown. Lena took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever was to come. She moved toward the structure, her fingers brushing against the dark surface. The moment her hand made contact, the structure seemed to react, pulsing with a deep, resonant hum. It was as if the entire planet had awoken in that instant, vibrating with energy. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and the air seemed to crackle with static. Lena felt her heartbeat in her chest, each thrum of her pulse matching the rhythm of the structure's hum. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew that she had no other choice. She had to unlock whatever lay inside. With a steady hand, Lena pressed her palm flat against the surface of the structure. As she did, the world around her seemed to blur, as though she were being pulled into another dimension. The humming grew louder, almost deafening now, and Lena closed her eyes, feeling the energy surge through her, the power of the structure flooding her senses. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, in an instant, the darkness lifted, and Lena found herself standing in the middle of an ancient, vast hall. The air was thick with dust, the walls covered in strange symbols and carvings that seemed to pulse with life. This was not just a structure. It was a place, a temple, a long-forgotten civilization. It had been waiting, dormant for centuries, until now. Lena felt a surge of realization. This was it. This was what the figure had been talking about. She had unlocked something ancient, something powerful, and now she had to figure out how to use it before it was too late. But as she stood there, the weight of the task before her pressing down on her, she heard a voice, faint but growing louder. "Welcome, Lena Korik. Welcome to the heart of Tharian.